You're listening to the Embracing Race podcast, conversations with truth and intention, with Shawnee McElwain and Jesse Littlejohn. Don't be surprised if the timeline seems a little bit cattywampus. All of our episodes were recorded in advance, some of them way in advance. So, yeah, just go with it. And thanks for listening.
Welcome to the Embracing Race podcast, conversations with truth and intention. I am your host, Shawnee. My pronouns are she, her.
I'm Jesse, and my pronouns are they, them.
How you doing, Jesse?
I'm doing okay.
Great.
Today is the 17th. 3 days until Martin Luther King Day. I know we have to acknowledge the other thing that's happening that day, but
The podcast drops.
that's right. The podcast drops.
That's what's happening in my neck of the woods.
How are you taking care of yourself on Monday?
I am going to brunch with the girls.
Good.
And yeah, we're gonna have a family meeting, I hope. I had this surprise. 2 of them are here, so I didn't want to say it out loud. But I have
Well,
this surprise if it comes in time.
well, it's Martin Luther King Day, so maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I made this up in my head, but don't you usually read the letter from the Birmingham jail every year? Is that part of your ritual?
Yes.
I thought.
Yes.
How
It's
do you
become a funny.
how do you do that? Like, what do you do? You just okay, it's time to read.
So I used to give it to them, and we would take paragraphs, and we would just read it. But then as they got older and it got more cantankerous, and begrudgingly, because there's one, I have a lazy reader. So she's like, oh my gosh, why was he writing these big words in jail? Who talks like this?
Fair.
I mean, he was a phenomenal writer, though. His lexicon was top tier.
I don't write like that anymore.
We do not.
Mm-mm.
Yeah. But it's always a reminder because he was really he was talking to and I'm not going to assume that all of our listeners know um Dr. King's letter from Birmingham jail, but he was protesting segregation laws in Birmingham and was arrested. This is well before the Montgomery County bus boycott, I believe.
I think
It
so,
was
yeah.
before that. But the they there were religious leaders that were supporting Dr. King at the time, other pastors, Protestant pastors, Jewish rabbis, Catholic. So people were starting to mobilize. He was starting to get traction, but they became cautious, or one could say that they started operating in white supremacy culture with the right to comfort, saying that he was being too hasty and that he needed to slow down the efforts and possibly uh, take a more casual approach to end segregation.
Mhm.
And Dr. King called them out. He was speaking to white moderates in the faith community, particularly. It was addressed to people of faith.
Right.
And he called out pastors on being silent in this climate. And as I'm recalling this point of history in my mind, it brings me to present day, where I feel like we need to be doing the same thing. Right? We need to be, I think we have in this quest to come together as one, which I'm not saying that that is not important.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying, especially if I put my coaching hat on there, you know, we always have those that are going to not be with the pack, right? And how do we hold the tension of those, of the majority coming along, and then those few stragglers that just haven't quite
Yeah.
decided to, you know, perhaps put their thinking cap on, put their put their compassion hat on, turn on the empathy a little bit higher, you know, like, so I actually, if I, you know, if I'm going to be candid, I would say that we have allowed grace to sometimes um, slow progress because we want to always extend grace, right?
Mm-hmm.
Give
Yeah.
grace, right? And I'm like, you know, sometimes grace, sometimes grace might get you killed.
Yeah. Well, I also wonder too if in our attempt to not live into white supremacy culture as a whole and to reject this sense of the white supremacy value of urgency, if we have in rejecting it just basically stalled ourselves
Right.
and then said but we're not going, but we keep justifying it by saying, well, we're not going to rush anything, we don't want to rush into anything, we want to like build relationships and do the good work, but like at what point are we just
Yeah.
sitting and spinning our wheels in the mud?
Yeah, it was interesting. Okay, so that's a great segue because it brings me to this point of I was just having this conversation with a colleague. You know, the PNC has been lagging. You know, this is a church trying to get a new call, right?
Mhm.
Trying to hire a new head of staff. And the PNC is like the, I guess the applicants that are being presented, both, you know, strong, you know, a lot of strong candidates available, but many of the people applying, you know, one is queer, you know, one would be the first person of color,
Mhm.
right? And the PNC recognizing that they're probably not as progressive or quite ready, right? But
Yeah.
so this is where when I say this is where it gets really nuanced, if you will. If there
Yeah.
might be a better word for it as I try to make my point. But this is where I want to caution people to say, well, we're not ready, so we're just going to overlook those candidates, right?
Yeah.
I think the I think what you're supposed to do in that moment is to just be transparent with your candidate, saying
Mhm.
that, you know, we would love to have you, but we don't know if we're ready for you. And
Yeah.
we don't want to know. I can't be 100% certain that you will not be harmed in this system, right? Now, for people, I can't speak for queer people, but I can speak for being Black and a woman. Just give me all the facts and let me make the decision because I'm already not, first of all, I already know the expectation that I'm gonna enter some type of something in a situation, right? Like I already know this. No, there is not a space that I can claim that is going to offer me 100% safety.
No, yeah, no,
And I'm
absolutely not.
and I'm okay recognizing that going in.
Yeah.
This is all about mitigating risk, right? I know what risk I'm willing to take in the moment. So what I think that PNCs need to do is just be transparent.
Yeah.
We are willing to journey with you. We are willing to get uncomfortable. Don't sell yourselves that you are this one, that you're one way when you haven't even opened a book.
Yeah.
You haven't
I
even been challenged.
yeah. I remember because I know who you're talking about and I know which church you're talking about.
Oh, you do?
I'm
We
pretty
won't
sure
say it out
because
loud.
I'm pretty sure that the colleague of yours also talked to me about this particular situation. Um, and I remember thinking like it's interesting because I remember them, her, or her, him.
They,
We're just gonna leave the pronouns to the wind. I remember them saying that there's one member of their PNC who is Ghanaian and he's progressive. And so the rest of the PNC, who I think is predominantly white, look to him to kind of get the feel for how the rest of the African contingent, I guess, or like congregants would feel about having a queer person come in. And he said, one, I can't speak for all Africans.
which is what he's supposed to say. Yeah.
And two, he's like, I am more progressive than the rest of the Africans who are here. So even if you were going to use me as the mouthpiece, I would not be the person that would be able to speak for everybody else.
Yeah.
So it's also one of those like they have, I think, so like yes, and like I'm hearing what you're saying 100% of like be transparent, let the candidate, especially since they made it sound like this candidate was like the perfect match, except for the fact that they're queer. And like that would be the one hang up. Otherwise, perfect interview, everything that they were looking for, yada yada yada.
Right.
Like, yes, and be transparent. Let her make her decision. Is this something that she wants to walk into? And I feel like the church in general needs to still do some significant work with them themselves to even broach the conversation of we don't even know our own members enough to be able to say like, oh, this is how this person feels and this is how this person feels. Like, are they even as a congregation having conversations amongst themselves to like, let me just look at this one African member and say, you speak for everyone. And like, obviously he doesn't speak for everyone. That's just like somebody looking at me and saying, well, you're queer, so let you speak for all queer people. And like, I don't know. I think yes, and they have a shit ton of work they need to do. And if she's the right candidate, then they should at least like let her know, like, we really like you and you need to make this decision, like exactly what you said. Like, this is what you would be walking into. You make the choice whether or not you
Yeah.
do it. I agree
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. And if they have not had a conversation, of course, maybe you need to start having one. But like, people can always begin to use that as an excuse to not do the work,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Well, we haven't had a conversation, so let's bypass, right?
absolutely.
Um,
And that
segue.
I feel like that happens more, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh
I feel
no,
like
you're
it
fine.
happens more in progressive churches than it does in conservative churches.
I agree. I agree. Hands down, 100%. It's interesting. I feel that that's happening also, like with the Tennessee
Mhm.
legislative, like they do things so they don't have to have a conversation,
Mhm.
right? Like they'll put, right? Like
Yep.
it's just like I follow Brother Jones on Instagram,
Yeah.
so I know too much about the Tennessee legislative session because
Yeah.
these younger politicians definitely use social media um,
Absolutely.
for, to energize their base. So the Supreme Court came down at 10:10 a.m. today saying
Mhm.
that they would not stop the law that goes into effect on Sunday, nor would the Biden administration implement the law on Sunday. So what
Yeah.
that means, I'm not a legalese. I'm just taking from the pundits that I watch in the morning. So what that means is that TikTok will live to fight another day.
Yeah. He's basically, from my understanding, he's like delaying the implementation for 36 hours, which would directly put it into the Trump administration's hands.
Right.
My understanding, and this is the part that genuinely confuses me, because I thought for the longest time that Trump was anti-TikTok because it was a very like, for the most part, progressive people saying, or like anti-Trump sentiment. But now I'm hearing that he's like, oh, I'm going to save the app. And he has the option, I guess, of after that 36 hours, once it becomes quote unquote his problem, he can like do a one-time 90-day extension to see if an American buyer will purchase the app. And then it takes the like mech of it being a Chinese owned company.
Can we just name the white supremacy goal of a government trying to force the sale of a company that is not even, that is a privately held company, right?
Yeah.
That is not even for sale. ByteDance, who owns TikTok, said it's not for sale. We don't want to sell. And you can't make us. Like,
No.
I was really hoping, I'm gonna be quite honest with you, right? And I know TikTok, so many people, I think TikTok is awesome, right?
Hmm.
For those, like, so many people need this for their entertainment, for their livelihood, for all the things that TikTok is known and good for. And at the same time, like, for y'all to sit there and say we're concerned about national security. No, y'all concerned because we saw too much genocide on TikTok. That is why you're concerned.
Mm-hmm.
We saw too much.
And
Because
because
you can't sit
um,
there and tell us a lie when we're watching live footage of
yep,
a counter narrative.
yep.
How do you explain that,
Yeah.
government?
I mean, I think that piece right there, the counter narrative. I mean, look how many, and this came up at the DNC,
Yes.
like beef between traditional journalists, so quote unquote, and then this rise of social media journalists and like quote unquote influencer news or media or whatever. And that a lot of, I don't want to call them influencers, but I would say content creators do a lot of news segments on their platforms because it's unfiltered. They don't have to like answer to anybody. They have straight up facts. They do their research through and through, and nobody's stopping them from telling the truth. And so it's exactly what you're saying. Like it's unfiltered, like calling out the bullshit, calling out the lies, and that doesn't work for the government because they don't have any control over that. But if we can ban it, then we do have control. And I'm just, on some level, like it's scary to have it be in Trump's hands. On the other hand, I'm like, that was a smart move by Biden to like just pass it down,
Yeah.
say, okay, if it's banned, it's his fault. And if your unemployment numbers skyrocket because all these people who no longer have jobs because TikTok is no longer a thing, and small
Yeah.
businesses, I mean, the amount of revenue that TikTok has driven for small businesses alone, particularly like restaurants and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
like I'm interested to see how many businesses will struggle without the social media influence that
Yeah.
TikTok brought.
Yeah.
I mean, you have people, what is it, Keith Lee, who goes to all the restaurants and then like grade
Yeah.
on a scale of 1 to 10, and how many people have come out since then doing something similar and they go to mom and pop restaurants and partner with people. I don't know.
Well, when they had the what was it during the Super Bowl last year? When didn't TikTok have a commercial? And you saw all of these TikTok influencers on this commercial, like this woman that who made soap from goats,
Mhm.
right? Like it was so many people coming out showing their business, their business.
Yeah.
A lot of women,
Yep.
a lot of queer people.
A lot of Black women,
Yeah.
but and I know that we have people in our lives who are personally being affected by it, like in a real way. And so I think my concern is that all of these people are trying to switch over to Meta or to Instagram or to Facebook. My concern is that in doing so, with Zuckerberg being basically a pawn of Trump at this point, how long before they're censored and like shut down?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, is YouTube now the only channel that they can viably go through? And that's just a totally different thing than TikTok and Instagram Reels or something. But I don't know. We'll see what happens. We will see what happens.
Hmm.
But I just don't understand why this is the priority right now. Like, why
Right.
are we making this app that is causing no harm? Why is this our priority?
I don't know. Because distractions
Hmm.
help further nefarious decisions.
Hmm.
When you distract the people, yeah.
Yeah. Like from the confirmation hearings that are happening right now.
Earth is not a real place. When you watch that, you clearly realize that we, number one, we gonna need help.
Mhm.
I how is it like did okay, this person who is been nominated to become the Secretary of Defense
Mhm.
has never served in the military. Is that correct?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Ha, ha,
Yeah.
is Hagseth has it's like the number one question that pops up. He volunteered to serve in Baghdad and he served as an infantry platoon leader and later as a civil military operations officer. He was awarded the Bronze Star. So he did serve. Uh,
Okay, so he has military experience.
he does, but I don't think he has unblemished military experience, from my understanding.
Well, neither does the president. He
This is
doesn't have a unblemished record.
That's not a qualification or a disqualification anymore to have.
Apparently not.
Yeah.
But he is an apparently accused rapist. Is that correct?
Accused rapist, accused, I want to say drug and alcohol abuser, like drunk on the job kind of situation. But multiple partners and multiple children from multiple people whilst being with other people, if that makes sense. So full-time adulterer, multiple kids from multiple women, whilst again, that's not a disqualifying act. We have a president who did the exact same thing. So,
I just can't. I just can't. I want to know, like, as a Black person, I'm just really curious of the fact of all of the Black men that supported Trump, campaigned for him, your Tim Scotts, your Tim
Mhm.
Scott, your the dude from Florida, the young guy from Florida, and a few others. Right after the election, Don Lemon posted like all of these known politicians, local state politicians, all Black Republicans who campaigned in their respective states on his behalf. And he did not offer a cabinet position to any of them. And the fact of the matter is that is the ultimate goal
Mhm.
when politicians campaign for each other.
Mhm.
The goal, it is a it you are doing this in the event your candidate wins.
You
You
have job security. Yeah.
you have a job.
Yep.
You're not doing it because you just like the guy or the
No.
gal or the person. Like you're doing it for a reason.
Yeah. I mean, the only time I think you do it because you genuinely like somebody is when you've already served in public office and you're all done.
Well, I think
Like,
you're doing that. I think at that point you're doing it for
because it's
I think
expected of
also
you. Yeah.
it's expected of you in optics,
Yeah.
right? I think also, and like, don't get me wrong, I think there is a level of like admiration and respect, but
Mhm.
you've already done it because let me tell you something. So all three living previous presidents do plan to attend the inauguration,
Mhm.
and their spouse, with the exception of Michelle, is not coming. Um, the funny thing is, but none of them are going to the inaugural luncheon.
I don't blame them.
Yes, because the luncheon is like, it's not televised. So I'm pretty sure it's a very celebratory event, right? And you could still celebrate with people that you don't necessarily agree with on every single policy. People have done it for the last 50 plus years. The problem is nobody likes you. Even the Republicans that are going to be there probably don't like him.
Mm-mm. No.
So,
Plus, I mean, it'll be 12 o'clock, 12 o'clock on Monday. It's going to be 21 degrees in Washington, D.C.
you got to
Well,
be real light to be standing out there in 21-degree weather. I'm sorry.
it's 21 degrees and it'll feel like 8. Or wait, hold on. It's going to feel like 10 degrees with a low
Wow.
of 2 degrees.
Ain't nobody coming out there.
I feel a little worried for people like George Bush and Bill Clinton who are not in the greatest of health sitting outside in 10-degree weather. I don't blame Michelle Obama for not going.
Not, not one iota.
I do think, I mean, it's expected because they're predictable as hell, but like the people who are making such a big deal about her not going and how disrespectful it is, while also ignoring that President Trump did not go to Biden's inauguration.
Right.
Like,
So you don't, and he was the freaking president.
he
We're
was the
not talking
president.
about the first lady.
Yeah. Who hasn't been in office for 8 years. Like, she has other things that she could be doing. Who, through the entire campaign, they called her names and called her trash and like belittled her to the nth degree and like threatened her life. Like, no, I'm not showing up to be like the bigger person anymore. Absolutely not.
Did you hear and did you get a chance to see that video I sent you this morning?
I
With
saw that about Kid Rock or something that he
yeah,
said
yeah,
he was angry.
talking about how he didn't vote for President Obama in 2008, but he also um he performed at the inauguration as a duty to country. And let's be clear, it wasn't a duty because you got paid for that, sir.
Mhm.
So you took the gig because your manager told you because you had bills to pay. That's why you took it.
Because he doesn't have money and he doesn't have clout anymore.
No, so that's why you took the job.
Yeah.
So it was a job for you.
Yeah.
But the difference between you showing up in 2008 and Michelle not showing up in 2024 is she's standing on business. She
Hmm.
doesn't have to.
She set her boundaries and she is standing by them,
Yeah.
protecting herself. Yeah.
Wild.
I'm interested to know if it would have been such a big deal if she also, and I don't, I mean, and I say this and please hear it as I don't care. She can do whatever the hell she wants. She's put in her time and she's earned her vacation. But like part of me does wonder if people wouldn't have made such a big deal if she had been at Jimmy Carter's funeral. Like if she had gone to that one and then skipped the inauguration, if this would be like a non-story. Or if
Well,
because
we
she,
don't even know why she wasn't there.
yeah,
So maybe something came up. Maybe, I mean, who knows? She's a
yeah.
private citizen.
Hmm.
So she gets to decide where she wants to spend her time.
Yeah. I mean, George Bush disappeared for like a decade, if not more. Like he just went under the wire and nobody saw him at anything ever, and nobody made a big deal about it. Like he literally
Are
just
we talking about Baby Bush?
Baby Bush. Yeah, Baby Bush disappeared in
Baby,
Texas for like,
he did. My boy dropped out of public life and then came back and was like, "I'm an artist."
yeah. Like
And started painting picture books.
I mean, literally after President Obama was sworn in, it was like George Bush who? And then all of a sudden he came out with that book of all these veterans and like that's what he's been doing for the last 12,
that,
14
that
years.
he's been, but that he painted though. Like,
Yeah.
you didn't mention, you didn't say, okay, this is, and I don't know, but I don't want to make it a black and white thing, but I do notice this that, like, I don't know, like, white men tend to like they hide all of the facets about them. Like, no one knew that he was like, and also maybe that was the time where politicians really didn't show their personality. Like,
Hmm.
so maybe that's what I'm picking up on. But like,
Yeah.
we didn't know like all the things that, because I watched the Today Show, right? So the few times he's been on the Today Show promoting those picture books
Yeah.
because it's for charity, I'm like, he's got a personality.
Hmm.
He's pretty cool
Yeah.
as a person, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm like, how come we didn't see this when he was president?
Hmm.
I don't know. So I think it's like like I don't know, because I don't know, for myself, I'm gonna speak for myself. I kind of embody like all parts of me, even when I doing professional things. Like,
Hmm.
I don't hide, like I try not to like hide my humor or hide my personality, even if I'm in a professional setting. Like I hope that people, if I'm coaching them, they'll be like, "Oh, I can hang out with Shawnee. She's somebody I can hang out with." Or
Yeah.
if I'm preaching, like I don't ever want to come into a space and be like, "I just, she's blah."
I don't know how I mean,
Like like the same with you. Like even if you are saying, okay, so we met on Zoom,
hmm.
right? But
Yep.
even like, and meeting on Zoom is not always, and we didn't meet one on one on Zoom. Like, I met you in a sea of people, but I was able to, I gravitated to your personality by how you responded to things on Zoom, and I'm like, oh, I can hang out with Jesse.
Yeah. That's really interesting because I noticed within my I don't want to make it a black white thing either, but I noticed in myself that I temper myself until I'm comfortable.
Okay, so maybe it's not. So maybe it's not a race thing, it's just a lived experience thing.
Maybe. Yeah.
Because,
I
okay,
I've never, I mean, my lived experience, and I'm not saying this isn't your lived experience because I know your lived experience has denied you access to the table and to the microphone. But I know from my personal experience being denied, like physically being told you can come, but you're not allowed to speak. I think for me, that's something that I always have in the back of my mind of like, who here isn't gonna want me to say what I have to say? And like who here,
rewind that.
yeah.
When did, can you share that? Like,
In college, when I
you
was,
were told that you were invited somewhere and could not speak because of your queerness?
yep. So in college, after I came out, I was a part of this club group, and I received an email because I was supposed to leave Bible study, and I received an email from the president of the group that said that they no longer wanted me to lead Bible study because had they didn't think that it was right given everything, and that I should have the authority or the leadership to be able to do that. And then I said, well, does that mean that you don't want me to come? And they said, you're allowed to come, but you're not allowed to participate and you're not allowed to speak. We won't give you voice or vote. So you can just basically be here, but you're not allowed to do anything. So I was
Wow.
literally just allowed to be a body in the room. And then that
Oh,
became
I'm so
sort of every group that I was involved in, and across campus, like even in class, it was, unless I was specifically called in by a professor, which very rarely happened, it was you can be in the room, but you're not allowed to speak because my
I'm so
queerness
sorry.
disqualified me from having any sense of authority, or, and not even authority, but like just having, I guess, they didn't trust the authenticity of what I was saying. They didn't trust the truthfulness of what I was saying because it was tainted by my queerness. So I think for me, when I walk into spaces, that coupled with just my upbringing of like always having to like second guess what I was told and what I was allowed to say, like I think for me walking into rooms, I don't trust my voice in the room because I don't know if people are going to be like, well, I don't, maybe they should be quiet. So, but
Well,
that's something that
yeah,
I'm working through to be like, no, I have a voice and I have a seat at the table, and like,
isn't it? Isn't God? This is a true. s- This is how I just. This is a true example and noticing for me of just and how scripture is so living and active in a lot of ways for me. When I, excuse me, when I hear stories like this, and then I go to the verse that says, and all things work together for good, right? Like, because your voice was muted in college, and
mhm,
now you're the vice moderator of your presbytery,
yeah,
right? Your voice was muted in college, but you be preaching. Like, your voice was muted in college, but you have your own podcast.
yeah,
Like, like if God is, don't, like, God, play in my face if you want to, but God does not play about me. God
yeah,
does not play about Jesse. So let me tell you what's about to happen. Like, you didn't know, but God knew, like, okay, yeah, all that's about to change. They're just going to get out of that environment and they're going to go where they're celebrated. And then all those people just going to watch when your platform just goes bigger and bigger. Yes, that was the person that you said couldn't talk in the meeting.
yeah,
Insert date.
yeah. Well, I mean, even, I mean,
Love it.
Think about what you posted on Facebook the other day with that picture. Was it yesterday? That picture of you standing behind the podium and
Oh yeah, yeah. My 10-year anniversary.
and just the way that you have changed in the last decade of how you frame yourself when you walk into, and I
Yeah,
think this is how you've grown as well in your lived experience. And I think
yeah,
some of that is shedding certain people that in your
yeah.
life have, but like
Absolutely.
the way that you said, like, I didn't call it preaching because I didn't feel like I could do that or that that was who I was. But now,
Yeah.
like, I mean, you speak, and
Jesse,
your speaking engagement,
Jesse.
like everything you do, I feel like is a sermon in some way. Like I'm hearing the voice of God come through you. So like you can say it's not preaching, but God damn it, yes it is. Like
Jesse, let me tell you something. Not only I was cracking up at myself yesterday when I was posting that because I'm like, not only was not calling it preaching, but now 2 years later, I be making preaching flyers. Like I be making flyers about where I'm going to preach. I'm like, God, you
they're so
funny.
good too. They're
You
like
are funny.
they're so like professionally done and like they're the kind of like they're like billboard worthy where you see advertisements, particularly for like black pastors and black and their
And,
wives, where you like see it. I'm like, yeah,
and
that's
I
yeah.
and I do that and it is marketing because every time I do that, someone it reminds somebody, yeah, they gotta call me. Like, because but yeah, it's so funny. Is it God is just amazing. I'm just like while I grieve that that happened to you, and I know that probably set you back, but the fact that yeah, it did not stop you though, right? It might have slowed you down, but it didn't stop you. It didn't stop you for having voice and you weren't technically you weren't even Presbyterian then, right? In college.
No.
And then to go to a denomination where voice and vote is like a really big thing. Like having a voice, like I would like to speak to the motion. All right. Like that is just that's not only is it ironic, it's just quite serendipitous for me. Like I just feel like
Yeah.
yeah, God really is in the business about of turning things around for our good and using even and being able to use that as fuel for us, right?
Mhm.
Like I think some of my best experiences with the divine have been when people have said no, I couldn't do something.
Mhm.
And and not saying that, but I think subconsciously oh, I can't. Oh, okay, watch.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
If you say so, right? Like that's pretty amazing.
Yeah. I think the thing that I struggle with the most and is 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 staying in the space of look what God can do and like look what God knew was coming and staying in that space and marveling at like the divine providence of it all and not going into the petty place of like how do you like me now, bitch? Like
No,
that's
you no, you have to. No, you have to. You have to. Like, I mean, I'm a always give a little bit of because
there
petty is good.
yeah. And I think that's why, like on some level, when I talk about being vice moderator and the way Be Clear moderator, assuming people elect me to that position, like I think that's why I've not shied away from saying, and this isn't to pump me up, but just to say, like, I'm the first openly queer person in National Capital Presbytery to hold this position. And like, one, that's history by itself. But two, like 2010, 15 years ago, like I didn't even know if I wanted to be alive and was hiding my queerness. And like God pushed me to come out and pushed me to say, like, you need to go and be, it's gonna be scary as fuck, but you need to go and like be a voice. No matter how much they try to tell
Mm,
you you can't, you need to go out there and say this. And now, 15 years later, I'm saying it from the pulpit in a position of authority and leadership. And like,
yeah.
and it's, and I can't deny that part of my identity as a Christian is influenced by my identity as a queer person. I cannot separate those two things. And so like it is important
I'm
for
so
me
glad
to
that you said that.
recognize like I am the first queer person in this denomination to hold this position. I will not be the last queer person in this denomination, in this presbytery to hold this position.
Right.
So, but yeah.
Yeah. I think you need to clip that part, Jesse, so we can make a meme. The part where you say that your queerness and your and and your and your Christianity identity are both interconnected.
Yeah.
I think people need to hear that more because I think a lot of times I think people on the outside and on the fringes think that it's separate. I
Well,
think people compartmentalize their identities
yeah.
in a lot of ways. And I think where you
Yeah.
see au- authenticity and I think that's why people gravitate to both of us in many ways is because it's interconnected and they
Mhm.
see that.
Yeah.
Like like, I have make no I I I make no hesitations and qualms or anything about like if people don't know that I love being black, then I'm doing something wrong. Cause I don't think I hide. I love being black.
Yeah.
I have never had and I am blessed that I never woke up being mad that I was black. And I know a lot of people that are in their bodies right now and are so angry with
Mhm.
their body. And so I don't take that lightly. So I understand as I say this that I'm saying it from a place of privilege, right? And what I hope that in my and me openly saying and affirming how I love myself, that it gives permission for people to love themselves, right?
Mhm.
So I'm not doing it in like this place to brag. I'm doing it like I never wanted to be anything even growing up with all of these white girls
Mhm.
wearing colors that my mother was like, "That is not the color for you." Yeah, right. No, you can't wear Wet and Wild pink.
Yeah.
It's not the color. That's not the color for you, boo. Like, even even when people were mesmerized by my hair, the way my hair did that.
Mhm.
When black women called perm when we got perms, it was to make this texture straight.
Right.
Right? So when white women get perms, it's to make their hair curly. So
Yeah.
even having to do tutorials on the basketball bus
Yeah.
on why my perm doesn't look like your perm.
Yeah.
I never strayed from having the conversation. So I know so God was setting me up for that shit.
Mhm.
Because I walked right into it. Don't
Yeah.
touch it, but we can talk about it. Right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's all connected. And it's funny because you want to know what is so funny to me is that even though I did not grow up in quote unquote black church, I I know black church.
Well, I mean, that has
I
to be
that
from your mom,
so
right? That has to like your mom's influence and your grandmother's influence.
maybe my grandmother, but by the time we moved to upstate New York, my grandmother wasn't going to church. She would go to church. She went to Bedside Baptist,
Yeah.
put her gospel music on and read her Bible. But me and my grandfather went to church every Sunday. My mother was not stepping foot in a church. Went to
What
church on holidays and if I was doing something.
in a predominantly white church, I'm assuming.
Mhm.
So what is your like first real, is it in childhood, your adolescence, adulthood? Because you became Presbyterian by marriage, no longer married, still Presbyterian. It's my favorite part of when you introduce yourself.
I gave that joke on Sunday. They did not laugh.
It's my favorite way that I if you don't say it, it's like it just it feels incomplete to me. But
I know.
like I want to know like because Presbyterianism isn't exactly known for like spirited worship. We're a very
Right,
white institution in so many ways.
right.
So what is your first real memory or like experience of quote unquote Black church, like that Black church experience?
Uh, it was the summer. I was probably 4 or 5. This was the summer. It was in the summertime, and I would go visit my grandparents in the summer. They still lived in Brooklyn. And my grandfather was in the choir, and it was a summer revival. And I sang with the chancel choir. I sang Going Up Yonder, and I was the soloist. And if anybody asks you where I'm going, where I'm going, and I sang, I'm going up yonder. And I had a whole 40-person choir backing me. Dang it. Ad libs and everything, Jesse. Ad libs and everything. And they was rocking. That church was rocking. And I dropped the mic. And after the song was over, I into the mic, I say, I don't even know what yonder means. And I dropped it. That was my introduction to church. And if you know me, that is probably on par for like
I get a picture adult Shawnee doing that for sure. How old were you when you did?
Johnny would be so scared to lead a song though. That's the craziest thing though. Yeah, I'm not gonna be singing. Then they're gonna be like, what don't you do? But yeah, that
How
that
old were
is
you when you did that? When you sang?
it's like night it was like I was like 4 or 5.
Holy shit.
I was so young. Yeah, and my uncle Rudolph had it on. Like now, I don't know how he got the footage, but the big projector
Yeah.
family
Yeah,
videos.
yeah,
He
yeah.
had it on. He had it on that, and every holiday he would plug it in, and it was like Shawnee was singing that song,
No,
and
did you?
Uncle Rudolph called me Marvin. Though he called me Marvin. He's
What?
like Marvin. You remember that? Why did he call me Marvin?
Yeah. Like Marvin
Call me
Gaye? Like
Marvin.
that's my
No,
first
no, no.
question.
He called me Marvin because my favorite book when I was a kid was Marvin K. Mooney, Will You Please Go Now? And I would make everybody read it to me. And I say, read it again. Read it again. He said, you don't know what happens at the end.
So, which did you prefer? Because you went to a predominantly all white United Methodist
And
church.
that was a United. So that was so Jane's United Methodist Church was it was a predominantly it was a United Methodist, but it was Black.
Okay.
And so I had Black church experience because even living in Hancock, my grandfather was still connected to Jane's. My grandmother was still connected to her Baptist church. So they would always go down to celebrate anniversaries. Like my grandfather was a trustee at Jane's. So when they would have like a trustee anniversary, when the men's choir would have an anniversary or the chancel choir have an anniversary, they would always go. We would make it a whole weekend.
Mm-hmm.
So there was one year we were down there for Easter, right? And that's
Yeah.
when I heard a sermon that you know, that Judas was cheap or something. It was just the weirdest like like I and like certain like there's certain memories of my childhood experience that I remember strictly in Black church, but I didn't have a weekly Black church experience.
Right.
So but then when I got to college, it was mandatory at HBCUs that freshmen had to go to church.
Yeah.
And so of course I got Black church experience there. And I
Mm-hmm.
would go to this Baptist church off campus a lot when the Hampton Gospel Choir wasn't singing at chapel, it was so empty. Because that the more uppity high church choir, they
Yeah.
only when they did anthems that was very high church.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody we wanted to hear
Mm-hmm.
that bass line. Like, so there's a different experience of hearing How Great Thou Art, high church style, as opposed to, you know, I'm trying to think of a clap your hands song right now, or I'm going up yonder.
Yeah.
Right. Right. I was
Yeah.
trying to think of a song that wasn't, amplifying heaven being the destination, but I guess heaven is the
Well,
destination.
like
Shut
I would
up, Bonnie.
say, even, and I'll say this because it's, this isn't one of my favorites songs, but like with church songs, I don't even know if it's you could call it. I don't even know if it's church, but like there's a huge difference between listening to Patty Griffin sing "Up to the Mountain" and then hearing a Black gospel choir sing "Up to the Mountain." There,
Yes, but
there is
both versions
both
are
both are
amazing.
good. They are both, and there
And
my former choir director Justin Ritchie, he did a version of it that just it speaks to my soul. But he had a friend who passed away last year who came to our church during February, and we had like a whole Black History Month service, and he did a version of it that like I still have not recovered from how amazing
I
it was.
want to hear it.
I think it's
Love
still
that song.
it's still
I
on.
go up to the mountain if you ask me to.
Yeah.
Mm, yeah,
And
that's a good song.
I think that
I have to play that now,
yeah,
Jesse.
it's I think the way, I mean, I'm not throwing them under the bus because obviously I love them because they're my people and they're my church, but like there was the idea thrown out of singing um the Black National Anthem during either this weekend or during Black History Month. And I was like, don't do that. Don't dishonor the song like that. Because I love our choir. I love our choir, but they have their limitations. And
Yeah,
they tried very hard to sing Jesus, what a wonderful child over Christmas. And
Jesus.
Matt had to tell people how to clap on the right beat. He was like, don't cover up Jesus's name. You do
Yeah.
not clap on Jesus. Do not deny the name of the Lord in this church.
Wait a minute. Don't clap on Jesus. Jesus, clap.
Yeah.
Jesus.
He's like, do not cover up the name of the Lord. Let Jesus' name ring out. And it was like, he did it in such a great way of like, I'm going to teach you white people how to clap on the 2 and the 4, but I'm going
But
to do it in a way that just is so, it was perfect.
that is but that's a good lesson though.
Yeah.
Whatever you do, don't clap on Jesus.
Yeah.
Oh, friend, I got a 12 o'clock, but I already told him I was gonna be late.
Okay. All right. I love you.
Love you more.
See you next
Peace.
week.
See you next week.
Would you like to support the Embracing Race podcast? Great, we want you to. Check out our Facebook page today for a link of how to donate. All who donate get a shout out in an upcoming episode.
The Embracing Race podcast is sponsored by the Gen Out Youth Chorus. Gen Out is an outreach ensemble of the Gay Men's Chorus of Washington, D.C. Gen Out's mission is to give young LGBTQ plus and allied youth a voice to connect to the community. The ensemble is open to all singers between the ages of 13 and 18. For more information, contact www.gmcw.org.
We are thankful for those who have sponsored the Embracing Race podcast. Shout out to the following groups and people. Gen Out. The Gen Out Youth Chorus. Gen Out is an outreach ensemble of the Gay Men's Chorus of Washington, D.C. Gen Out's mission is to give young LGBTQ plus and allied youth a voice to connect to the community. The ensemble is open to all singers between the ages of 13 and 18. Please visit www.gmcw.org for more information. Interwoven Congregations. Isn't it our hope that we would all come together as a society across the chasm of race and become the beloved community that Dr. King imagined? Interwoven Congregations' mission is to organize and support partnerships between faith communities with different racial compositions in order to foster racial justice and healing. For more information, please visit www.interwovencongregations.org. HOD Records. HOD Records is a talent and artist development company that specializes in artistry development and content creation. Serving the DMV and beyond, HOD creates a family-centered management style that promotes a collaborative spirit. Check out HOD Records on all social media platforms and visit hodrecords.media for more information. If you would like to be a sponsor of the Embracing Race podcast, please email embracingracepodcast@gmail.com.
Thank you all to our sponsors.